All right, folks, good evening. Welcome to Arcane Radio. There's not going to be an intro tonight because apparently I killed the file, but that's okay. Lon and I are here. Got this big red flashing
Uh,
banner on my page that says, Error, can't load track. Well,
I
piss
saw. I
off,
saw us
you.
trying to reconnect.
Oh, I'm telling you
So
what.
that's what happened, huh?
Yeah, oh well. Here we are. Arcane Radio, folks. We weren't able to make it Monday. I apologize. Old Fork Chop was under the weather, and Lon was gracious to change things up because you didn't want to hear what was coming out of me.
We had food poison, didn't you?
I don't know what the hell I had, man. I felt terrible. I got home from work. My boss was nice, let me go home a little early on Monday, and when I got home, I don't know, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was, bleh,
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it. Finally, last couple days, I got a good night's sleep, and here we are, Lon, tonight, going to talk about alien abduction with Bret Oldham,
Yeah.
and
This will be an interesting show.
it's going to be very interesting indeed.
Uh, I'll be honest with you. I only read parts of the book. I read excerpts of it from actually a couple of years ago, but I've got some things written down and all. So, but I know his story. He was actually Um, he was actually part of the Monsters and Mysteries America's first season. The when he was living in Las Vegas, and I guess and he was part of that desert wasteland episode, the last one. The one actually was the one that JC was on.
I remember that.
Yeah, they were. He had the last segment of the show, and they were talking about the abduction and everything he and his girlfriend went through. So we'll let him tell everything, and it's a compelling story, and it really makes you think. I've been through this with a lot of witnesses and a lot of experiences over the years, and you know, it's not fun and games. I mean, these things are this is serious stuff, and some of the things these people go through is horrendous. That's just a simple word for it.
Well, Lon, you've investigated this for a long time. You've interviewed countless amounts of people that have experienced, let's just call it what we believe it to be, alien abduction. Correct? They've experienced. They've been part of this. They've been through the traumatic these traumatic experiences. I yield to you on this. Me? Am I a little skeptical about it? Hell yeah, I'm a little skeptical about it. But it doesn't mean I can't be respectful about it. And I might ask a couple questions tonight that might be a little skeptical, but please note that, Lon, you know me, you know I'm about, I'd never be disrespectful to somebody. So if folks are expecting someone to be a little skeptical and maybe a little overheated, not going to happen here tonight. This show is for our guests to tell listeners about their experiences and for Lon and I to discuss it with them, not to make them feel like they're not guests in our home or on our program. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, there's got to be something to it. I mean, there's too
I
many
agree.
people through this stuff, and I don't know if it's to the degree that a lot of people say it is. We've talked to abduction researchers in the past and
Uh
people that
huh.
have been abducted in the past, and you know, some you can take with a grain of salt. Some it's just their story is just overwhelming, and you just know something happened. Brett's
Definitely.
story is very similar to what I have been told by other experiencers. And when he starts to explain what happened, uh, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna interject once in a while, put a few things in there. But all in all, we're just gonna let him tell his story.
Definitely. We want them to tell our story. Feedback from the listeners we've got over the last couple weeks is even though they appreciate you and I sharing our experiences and our passion on things, sometimes they'd like to hear a little bit more about the listener. And it was
Mm.
really good feedback. And we take that feedback to heart. As always, email us your comments and thoughts. Info@arcaneradio.com. Lon at arcaneradio.com or Sean at arcaneradio.com. I'm sorry, it's Lon Strickler at Arcane Radio, Sean Forker at arcaneradio.com. and we make sure we read each and every email that you folks send us. So send us your comments. We love the feedback, but we're going to take this feedback and always improve the show, and that starts tonight. So you wanted to hear about this gentleman's stories. We're going to let him tell them to you, and when we have a question or thought, we're going to pop in and ask away. And I think that's a pretty good way to do it, Lon.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some other things we've been kicking around too. As far as the show goes, you mentioned to me tonight about possibly changing the show to a Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound bad to me. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It's up to you and what the listeners are, think about it. So if you've got any feedback on that, folks, let us know. This wouldn't be something we do for a couple months, but let us know if Wednesday night's a better night for the listenership. So
Well, I'm taking that feedback from the listeners, because pardon me, hiccup there from my Gold Peak tea, green tea, cheap plug. And the listeners, when we posted that the show was moving to Wednesday, they were a little excited about it because more folks were able to participate. And we see it in the chat room tonight. We got a decent amount of people participating in the program. So I'm kind of encouraged by that. And like Lon said, it won't be for a couple months, but we definitely like to do that for you.
and we're also kicking around going on another format too.
That's right. We're kicking that around.
We don't know if we're going to stay with Mixler or go somewhere else, but we'll still be here.
That's right.
Of course, we're just trying to fix the quality, make sure the quality is consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and though it sounded good last week, and so far tonight it sounded pretty good as well. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely. But I want folks to know that, again, Lon, this is a work in progress. We're always trying to be better for them because without them, well, you and I would still be here, but we'd only be talking to ourselves.
Well, yeah, we do a lot of that anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What do you got for us tonight, Lon?
Oh man, let's see. Not a whole lot, but I do have a few things. I I have been receiving for the last couple of months transcripts from a friend of mine, Jamie Bryan. He's a young man in Canada that listens to. I mean, he must listen to all the radio shows, and he transcribes a lot of them. And some of the stories that people call in, he transcribes and sends off to me, which I truly appreciate. I mean, it's fantastic. Some of the stuff is great. Well, anyway, he sent me something this past week that I thought was pretty interesting, and it kind of goes along with what we're talking about this week, basically aliens. But he said that, and I think the show was, and of course, maybe somebody, some people had listened to it. It was on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero show back last May, and he says here that a woman by the name of Laura in Michigan called into the show to talk about a bizarre sighting she had at a Costco. And he said that this case happened in Michigan, and the caller never indicated a date. So this is what she stated. Myself and my two daughters had gone to the store. We were at Costco. We were approaching the food court, and my daughter had seen an odd couple, and she had kind of whispered to me, "Look, Ma, I think they're angels," like a sweet, adorable, doddering old couple. I don't know. I had a kind of foreboding type feeling about them. I said, "I don't think they're angels." We proceeded to go over. We ordered pizza. We were going to sit down with the pizza, and the boxes at Costco are ginormous. One of the females said to me, "You could sit at our table." We had more room to sit there and eat. I said, "Okay." We ended up offering them a piece, and they said that they had gone. The female had an MRI done. They were checking her for brain cancer or a brain tumor or something like that. And I sparked the conversation because my daughter, who's 25 now, had brain surgery for brain cancer when she was 11 years old. So we started talking to them a little bit, and they declined the pizza offer because whatever, I forget I can't kind of understand what it wrote here. So we just kind of talked to them a little bit. Anyway, when we were getting ready to leave, I said, "Hey, what's your name? I want to pray for you." She kind of stammered a little bit, and as she stammered and stuttered a little, I saw what looked like a hologram over her face. And through the hologram, I could see a head shape and could kind of see and kind of make out features a little bit, not a whole lot, but to me it looked like what people call a gray alien. So after that, she told me her name was Ruth. And I don't remember them walking away. I don't remember none of that. The next thing I knew, we were kind of, all of us, we didn't speak about it at all. So we were in the middle of the parking lot going towards my vehicle, and I kind of said, "Hey, did anybody notice anything weird about Ruth's face?" That's when my 25-year-old said, "Yeah, that's kind of weird." She goes, "It looked kind of like a mirage or something, kind of like wavy across her face." And I said, "Yeah, did you see anything else?" And I said, "Like beyond that?" And she said, "No, why?" I said, "Because I did." It was just so surreal, and it still is. To me, it seemed like it was yesterday. I mean, they get tired of me talking about it, but I mean, what are you going to do? There's nothing that you can. People are going to think that I'm out of my mind. I told my husband and my daughters, my 21-year-old and 25-year-old, we just discussed it so much, like so much that they keep telling me to stop. So why did this happen to me? Why could I see it and my daughter couldn't? She could sense there was something wrong with them. I don't know. I just wanted to call in and tell you about it. Well, that's kind of a weird story, but I tell you, I do hear and I do get, comments from people on similar type of, in, encounters for whatever reason. Are they among us? Yeah, I think they probably are. Uh, I think our guest probably thinks they may be as well, uh, though his situation is somewhat different. But as far as being here with us, I don't know. It's kind of a strange story, but some people do have a way of changing, the way they look very quickly. But as far as something like this, like a mirage or something, or like a shapeshifter, that's a bit different. So I just give that to you for your interpretation.
For you, the listener, to make up your own mind.
Yeah, make up your own mind. 'Cause I tell you, that's a weird one. Let's
When
see.
aren't they weird? They're always weird, but sometimes they're really weird.
Yeah, we get some really interesting ones sometimes. What's this one here? Must be something about Costco, because I'm a I just pulled up a story here from another Costco. The Costco baby. Now I had this for a while.
What?
Yeah, this is something else I wanted to bring. It's another alien story. In September 2009, a Memphis, Tennessee woman called into Tennessee MUFON to report that she was sure she had just had an encounter with an alien human hybrid baby at Costco's in Cordova, Tennessee. It's funny because I just ran up against this. That's funny. I didn't even know I had this. Anyway.
Coincidences, I think not.
Yeah, that's weird. She and her granddaughter had gone there to pick up a birthday cake. As soon as they walked through the entrance, a tall Asian-looking man who was apparently in a big hurry walked directly across their path, almost running into them. He was dressed casually in all black clothing and had a Caucasian-like infant in a carrier basket strapped in front of him. He seemed to take no notice whatsoever of her and her granddaughter as he marched on past them without one word of apology for the near collision with them. My correspondent, who had asked to remain anonymous, told me that, and then this was actually a report to MUFON, told me that seeing a man of Asian descent who was over 6 foot tall was in itself unusual. But she had to confess that the racial contradiction between himself and the infant companion startled her more than anything else. Now, she didn't get a good look at the baby at the time. If she had, she might have stopped in her tracks right then and there and asked her granddaughter, "Did you see that?" But neither she or her granddaughter commented on that moment about this sudden close encounter.
How old was the baby?
I don't know.
Because, like, because he's Asian and the baby's Caucasian? Don't all babies look Asian? I mean, for crying out loud.
Oh, I don't know. Well,
I always think so. I mean, they all have I don't know.
So that's a weird one. That's weird. In fact, this story actually, I think, came to Linda Moulton Howe. Yeah, that's pretty weird. But I don't know. I actually had a story of in a store like that where a woman and her daughter, or one and her granddaughter, had seen a baby in a carrier where the eyes turned black as she was looking at them.
That would freak me out. I would probably punt it. Not that I'm encouraging everybody to go out and punt babies, but if that thing's eyes rolled over black, I would punt it.
Here's another one I had. And I've had this for a while, but it's pretty interesting. It's about a woman named Delia who's Puerto Rican. She was just one of many women who have been abducted by a UFO. Delia is married and has 2 other children. One is 16 years old and the other was 5. Now, let me say first of all, for some reason, and I have gotten a lot of reports from Puerto Rico over the years.
I was going to say, this sounds like something we talked about a couple weeks ago.
This is something different.
Okay, here we go. Something new.
I've had a lot of cases from Puerto Rico, and in fact, I will pull it out one day. It's a long read, but it's from a woman, Maria Rivera. She used to live in the interior of Puerto Rico, and her house was surrounded by rainforest. And she was abducted at one time, and she's had several friends she say were abducted as well. So, I'm just putting that premise out there before I read this.
So she was abducted, and some friends were abducted at the same location.
And Maria's story, which is interesting, she had cancer. And after she was abducted, she was cancer-free after that. And the doctor, she went for an MRI. In fact, she had to go into New York because she has a house in New York as well. Went to see the doctor, and they did an MRI, and the tumor was gone. And she hadn't even taken treatment yet. Well, anyway, so this is a narration of Delia's extraordinary experience. She describes how she was abducted, got pregnant by an extraterrestrial, gave birth to a child which she describes as half human and half extraterrestrial.
What is it with this? I mean, it bugs me a little bit, and I'm sorry to just jump on you there. Like, extraterrestrials.
Go ahead. This is a long story, so I'm not gonna really read it all. But yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about this.
Do they have nothing better to do than to come to our planet and knock women up? I
don't know.
Come on.
I think, and I think this is something that we're going to get into with Bret, because, of course he's going through this, and I wrote something today about Eisenhower and meeting emissaries from and having treaties and such with these aliens. Apparently, the story is, and it's hard to really, to really base any of this as fact because all of it, for the most part, is anecdotal anyway.
I'm really trying to not make a Bill Cosby joke out of all this. I'm just letting you know this. I'm like
Yeah,
biting my tongue.
but I believe now, and I think Brett agrees to this, and we'll ask him later that these grays may may possibly be trying to reinforce their species somehow with human DNA. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's the reason for the hybrids, or if we're allowing them to do this for exchange for technology. I think there may be something to that. I have heard lots of different stories about treaties, and this all goes along with the Dulce Underground and a lot of other areas out in the Southwest where this so-called experimentation
This is weird.
in breeding is taking place.
It's like intergalactic political prostitution is what all this
Now,
is.
it's I don't know. It's just there've been so many different takes on this. Uh, I've actually got my own theories, but I'm
It's
not.
disturbing. It's a disturbing line of thought for me to go down to just think, just for the remote possibility that this is all sanctioned governmental behavior, that it just bugs me to no end. Like, this is real X-Files shit, pardon my language.
Yeah.
And it just bugs me, like it's making my skin crawl.
Well, we had you remember we had oh God, Nick Redford on just
Mm-hmm.
a couple of weeks ago. Well, about a month or so ago, and he was talking about the RH negative factor
Mm-hmm.
uh, coming up in just a small percentage of
That
humans.
legacy bloodline we were talking
Yeah,
about.
and after we had talked about that, I've been checking into a lot of that, and there is particularly some people that claim to be hybrids that where this where their blood does turn out to be with the negative RH factor, and in fact, there have been several books written in the past few years by these people who state they're hybrids. One case is Milagros Garcia, which is another Puerto Rican lady who claims that she was that her father was an alien and that her mother was implanted. So I mean, and that's not the only case. There are other cases. I know there's a woman out in Ohio who, and I don't know her name offhand, who has the same claim as well. Um, I know it's kind of hard to argue with these people, or you can listen to their story and take it for what it's worth, I guess. But I'll be quite honest with you. I've worked with a lot of abductees and experiencers, but I will say that none that I have worked with have ever gone through this um, with the exchange of DNA for hybridization. It's always been there have been experimentations, there have been surgeries, but it's been for something other than that.
My problem with all this is
Mm,
at the end of the day, really, it lacks proof, right? And it's not
no,
that you never want to be insensitive to something like this because these are really, truly traumatic experiences that these folks really believe that they've encountered, they've endured, correct? I mean, you never want to minimize that, but there's part of me that goes, man, some of this is really fantastic and like it just came out of a sci-fi movie. And I don't know, Lon, that's where I yield to you as you've been the guy to go through and investigate, talk, and uncover some of these more disturbing and downright bizarre encounters.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm trying to be
yeah.
sensitive about it, and I don't want you to think I'm not with you. I'm
No, no,
just,
no.
man,
I
it's
no, I
just,
understand. I mean, I'd say the vast majority of people don't believe for any. I mean, any
I
of it.
want
I
to.
mean, there are people who are skeptical, like yourself. Uh, but it is. It's hard to believe. That's why I just like any type of encounter anybody has, not just particularly an alien encounter,
Mm-mm, any encounter.
any type of cryptid, paranormal encounter, anything. Uh, you, and you know how I am. I take anybody at their word
And that's
until
fine. And I
proven
think that's
otherwise.
great, Lon. I
But
really
like you
do.
said, most evidence is anecdotal evidence. I mean, and it's hard to disprove people unless it's just totally impossible. I mean, it does take some common sense sometimes to weed out, some of the ridiculousness that people tell you.
There are people who
But
just want attention,
well,
but
sure.
then there are people that have long term, over periods of years,
Mhm.
visitations, abductions. Are those the people that, how do you tell those folks that everything that's made up? That's the thing that gets me. Like, we don't know, we weren't there. Of course, there's not going to be any proof out of this, but, you know, I don't
Well,
know.
I can honestly
I
say,
can't finish that thought.
of all
I
the
don't know.
cases that I've looked into and that have been brought to me, not one of these cases had been one single episode. It's been a string of episodes.
Have you had an experience, Lon? Do you
Yeah,
think? Just
yeah. I've had I had something recently, uh, and I've had at least two other encounters. I had something happen a couple of weeks ago that I can't explain, and until I do figure it out, I'm not really going to go into a lot of it. I will say that whatever happened to me in this last episode, I didn't see any alien beings or any type of beings at all. But it was just so weird. Uh, you know, it was something happened. I don't know exactly what it was, but something happened. I had lost time. I lost about an hour and a half, and uh, and I will be honest with you, I was probably as frightened as I ever have been.
yeah, man,
And I've got
it's
somebody.
rough.
I've actually got somebody helping me with it right now.
I didn't mean for you to
Uh,
bring this up on air or anything. I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. No, but I will. When I do figure out what's going on, then I'll probably write about it. But until then, I just want to get as much facts about what happened. You know, um, I've had. Well, I told you a while back, or that I had I think I had an incident when I was a child. Well, when I was in high school, because I had a scoop mark that was found near my navel, and I had an implant behind my knee that I dug out, and but but from that period up until maybe the last couple of years, I can't remember anything happening. That doesn't mean nothing did happen. So yeah, so it's one of those things. It's nothing it's nothing that it's caused me to have problems that I know of, but I am aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and again, I didn't mean to bring all that up for you
Yeah,
on the
that's
air where we had to talk about it in front of everybody, but you know, it's as far as I know, and I'm not asking for it, so please, don't if they're listening. I've not had an experience like this, and that I remember, that I recall, and I don't know if I want to experience anything like this. It's just, there's a huge part of me that empathizes with the folks that have experienced these things, because so badly I want to be able to understand, what they're going through, that I'll never be able to understand that. It's
mhm.
like anything else. You get there and say, "Oh, I understand, I get you," but I really don't. And I'd like to be able to, just, I guess, let folks know that I do empathize. Even though part of me is very skeptical I really do empathize with the folks going through this because even if I don't think it's real, they do.
Hmm.
And that's, sometimes there's more harm in that than anything. It's fun to joke about, fun to, do all kinds of things, but it's not fun to be disrespectful, so I don't want to come across that way. But, I really empathize with this.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so
Hope that made sense. I don't know. I haven't
well, I
been
tell you,
drinking.
why don't we just go ahead and take a break and
All right.
let's have Bret come on, let him tell his story to us.
All right. And as per usual, you're just going to be listening to some dead air for a couple moments. Don't feel bad. If you want to blame anybody, blame the powers that be because I'm cheap and I'm not going to pay to play music. So you just go ahead, smoke them if you got them, drain the lizard. I don't know. We'll be right back right after this, folks. Stay tuned. All right, folks, we're back. That wasn't too long now, was it? Lon, you there with me, big guy?
Yeah.
All right. Lon's going to read the bio, so take it away, Lon.
Our guest is Bret Oldham. He's the author of Children of the Graves, a personal account of his lifelong alien abduction experience, and he also wrote Ghost Stories of Las Vegas. Now, Bret began researching the paranormal in his teen years in the hopes of finding answers to his own experiences. Bret and his wife Gina, who are based out of Nashville, Tennessee, their research encompasses a wide spectrum of paranormal, including ghosts, UFOs, and cryptozoology. They have been featured on numerous radio shows, magazine, newspaper articles, internet, local PBS and national TV in the U.S., Canada, New Zealand, and Europe, including shows on Bio, Discovery, CBC Canada, TV7 in Bulgaria, and most recently, Bret was featured on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. Bret has contributed to several books by other authors and has written articles for Alternate Perceptions and Mysterious Universe magazines. So I wish to introduce to everybody Mr. Bret Oldham. Bret, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lon, and thank you, Sean. I appreciate you guys having me on. Before we get started, I want to compliment you on your excellent newsletter that you put out. I've been subscribed to that for quite a while, and I really enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that. So right off the bat, first you've been experiencing these type of encounters with aliens most of your life, have you not?
I have. My experiences started when I was 5 years old. I lived in southern Illinois at the time, and out in the country, in an old farmhouse surrounded by soybean fields and cornfields, gravel road going up to the house. I mean, it was pretty remote, and it was a house that was 2-story, and the stairwell was sort of in the middle of the house. And in the wintertime, my parents would close off the upstairs, and they'd bring my brother and my sister and I. We'd sleep in this sort of large living room area, and basically on the floor for my brother and I. And my sister would be on the sofa. They just had to kind of save on the heating bill. And it was late fall, and I was awakened one night. I heard a voice, which I actually, at the time, when I raised up, I thought it was my stepdad calling out to me. And I kept hearing, I couldn't figure out where it was coming from because, of course, there's nothing but the ambient noise out in the country like that. And it was coaxing me to come to the window, and I noticed a very bright light coming in the side window. I got up, just sort of curious young kid, wondering what was going on, and walked across the cold hardwood floor, and we had these very thin white curtains, no blinds, didn't really need them out there, and I didn't go to the window where the light was at, although I was very curious as to what was causing the light because we didn't have any kind of street lights or anything like that. And I raised my right hand up, pulled away the curtain, and came face to face with what we now know as a typical gray. That moment pretty much changed my life.
Hmm. Now, based on your lifetime of alien encounters, and in particularly the incident we're going to talk about in a bit, it had to be difficult for you to write this book.
It was. I mean, I only remembered my first two encounters. This was when I was still a child, and I came back telling my mom about the little men who took me, and, you know, she just brushed it off like a lot of parents do with their kids and their imaginary friends.
Right.
And then after one night we were watching The Wizard of Oz, and I had never been exposed at that point in time to any comic books, any movies, anything to do with aliens. Was never talked about in my house. My family and relatives were all really religious, and anything to do with paranormal got instantly attributed to demons, and, you know, it was one of those type of things. And I was very, very innocent. And so when even my mind couldn't even process what was not only what was happening to me, but what I was seeing, because I had nothing to compare it to. And after I was watching The Wizard of Oz and the scene come on with the flying monkeys, I started basically just having a fit and going berserk, and my mom couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and it triggered, you know, these memories. And I think the Greys knew at that time, you know, it's time to wipe his memories, and everything that happened to me was suppressed from then all the way to my early 20s. I had a lot of the classic symptoms, you know, the chronic nosebleeds, and unexplainable scars popping up, things like that. But I ended up in therapy in my early 20s from severe anxiety, which is very common with, you know, people don't realize the trauma that is induced by these experiences, and is something that needs really more addressed more. I mean, I know, of course, as my books came out, I've been contacted by people from all over the world, but I mean, last year in 2015, I know 2 people that committed suicide because they couldn't handle their abductees. They couldn't handle the anxiety that's associated with it, and myself, and that's actually how my memory surfaced, because I ended up in therapy basically for the anxiety. And I'd been into sports when I was younger, and at that time I was a professional musician, and I've been in front of people a lot. I'm not the type of person that had anxiety. I ended up with like severe agoraphobic. I didn't even want to leave the house, you know, so it was affecting me. I knew I had to do something. And even when the memories started coming out, like I didn't tell a therapist, and, you know, because of just the skeptics out there, what you have to endure, everybody with their anal probe jokes, and it was just one of those things, you know, I call it suffering in silence, and that's exactly what happened for years and years, because once the floodgate sort of opened, it just more and more, it was, you know, just coming out in dreams, it would come out in actual conscious memories, and I think that's, when you have an event of a volatile nature like that, you know, it gets repressed into your subconscious, and it's to the point where your subconscious is protecting you. But when it gets to the point where it can't hold it, so to speak, anymore, it's going to come out in some kind of physical form. And a lot of abductees, and people have these experiences, especially multiple experiences, that's added up over time. They do end up with a lot of symptoms very, very similar to post-traumatic stress. I mean, there's actually, they're calling it post-abduction stress now, PAS. And a lot of things that happen with that, and it happened with me, is even when I first started having these memories, I denied, you know, I didn't want to accept it. I was like, there's no way. And then I got angry about it, you know, once I started kind of accepting it, because more and more stuff started coming out, and then I started putting all the pieces together. And so you go through these stages, and it gets to be like a really, really hard thing to accept. And there's nobody, especially, this was in the, you know, the 80s. I mean, there was really not that many people. I couldn't go tell my therapist, you know. You know, I talked to my mom about it, and that was pretty much it. I mean, I kept very, very quiet about it, and I knew. I eventually got to the point where I had remembered so many experiences that I decided, you know, it took me 20-some years, you know, to get the nerve and the courage to actually put it into print and put it out there, because I wanted to bring more awareness to the public in any way that I could about what's going on and what really happens. And I went in a lot of details and a lot of stuff that most people would find very embarrassing, you know, the sexual stuff that's done, And I talked about a lot of stuff that really hadn't been brought about before in books up to that point, and because I just wanted people to know, like, what I talked about my going through my own depression, and what it affects you mentally, and everything like that, because I wanted more awareness in the reality of what happens out there in any way that I could contribute to it. And I also wanted to be not only a voice for people that are having these experiences, but also like something that they could relate to and know that, no, you're not crazy. You're not having sleep paralysis and all these lame things that the people try to attribute this to, that just doesn't add up. When you get into, it's a very, very complex phenomenon that's going on. And when you get into what's really happening and you find out, I mean, I can tell you right now, living in Nashville, there's one famous country singer that won't go public with it that I know about that's had these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But there's celebrities that's had them. There's people from all walks of life that's had these experiences that don't want to go public with it because of the stigma associated with it. And the more people that come out with their stories, the better it's going to make for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do. I knew when I decided to write the book, it took me 2 years because, I had developed coping mechanisms by this time in life, and I started writing a book, and I started going right back into depression again, and I was reliving a lot of the stuff I really didn't want to go back and visit again, and so then I have some people that I know here in Tennessee that's encouraged me, friends of mine and my wife, and I'd wait 2 or 3 weeks, I'd start feeling better again, and I'd go back at it. And then I finally got to the point where I was sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I knew I could finish it. And once I did, and I went public and put it out there, it was just such a huge relief off my shoulders, to let everybody know, look, this has happened to me. And of course you put yourself as a target when it gets to like that. There's people that are threatened by the truth of this. It threatens their religious beliefs, and so they're going to try to attack you and do everything they can because they feel threatened by it, but for the most part, most of the people that I know and my family, luckily I had a life of building of a man of good character, and most people said, wow, if he says this, then it happened, and so that was. I really appreciate the support, from the people that in my life and a lot of people that I've came across, since the books came out.
Bret, have other folks in your family had similar experiences to yours?
Yeah, and I do think this is a genetic thing. It is, once they find a certain genetic code within a family, they stick with it. My family's got strong Native American blood, and there's a lot of, in my research anyway, I heard you guys talking about the Rh negative thing, which that's really attributed mostly toward the reptilian thing, but with the Greys, they seem to favor people that have Native mix with Celtic mix, and that's exactly what I am, Irish and Native American, and in my family line, there was rumors of some odd stuff with my great grandfather that was very similar with my life, and my mom remembered when she was 14, 15, right in there somewhere, being on some kind of a craft and put in some kind of strange chair and seeing these, this equipment and these controls and stuff that she had no idea, of course, what it was, so I think it continued, and that's one of the fears you kind of live with, because it's something that you wouldn't really want to wish on anybody, and you certainly don't want to happen to family members or any loved ones.
Mm. Well, I guess we ought to talk about the incident that provided you with the title of the book and subsequent events. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, I knew if I ever did get the courage to write a book, I knew what I was going to call it, and I knew exactly what the cover was going to look like. And my brother, Jeffrey Oldham's, he's an award-winning artist in Las Vegas, and he did the depiction on the cover for me, and he did a fabulous job. It's very, very similar to the hybrid child that I was presented with. I heard you mention the Monsters and Mysteries episode that we were on, and she also did Ancient Aliens with me, and the child that's well, I guess I can get to that story. And this is an incident that, when you get people, when something happens with multiple witnesses and they both have experienced the same thing, it sort of raises raise it up a notch, and that's exactly what happened with us. We were awakened in our bedroom. I was living in Las Vegas, and we heard a thump, like a real loud banging noise, kind of a thumping sound. And we both woke up, and she remembered seeing, I think, 4, and I remember seeing 5 because there was one up on my side of the bed, the way the master bath was in that bedroom. The wall was kind of blocking her view from that one. Surrounding us, typical small grays, and what we found out later, she had a old-fashioned typewriter up on a stand in the bedroom, and they had inadvertently hit it, knocked it off, and it hit the floor, and that's what woke us up. I don't think they woke us up purposely, but they took us at the time. She was 1 week shy of her first trimester pregnancy, and we had actually just been to her OBGYN the week before that for a checkup. Everything was fine. And when I woke up, I found myself laying on a platform 8 to 10 feet from a platform to her. And of all my experiences, I had never seen this many of them in a room together at a time. And they had her, she was to my right, and they had her near a wall where there was some equipment. And there was actually a tall gray. And for people that's unfamiliar with this, this is just my observations and my own opinion, but I think it's pretty valid. The small grays that everybody sees in the media and everything, they're not the real aliens. I mean, they're workers. I think they're created. There's a tall gray that has created the small grays. I believe they're biological robots, clones. They have a hive mentality. They're completely logic-based. Anything that goes against what they're programmed to do, they don't even know how to react to it. They will speak to you telepathically, but it's all the same, condescending, we're not going to hurt you, all this kind of stuff like that. Over and over, it's the same thing. They clearly take directions from the tall grays. And in this case, they were surrounding me, except they left an open area on the right side where I could clearly see what was going on, and I was not able to move. They do this mentally. Their mental powers and their mental control over you while you're taken it's really hard to wrap your head around if you've never experienced it, but it's very real, and you're literally at their will. I mean, whatever they want, that's what you're going to do. And they immobilize you in this way. And the tall gray was, they had her up about like in the same way that a woman that was giving birth, her legs were up and sort of these syrup-like things, and there was a tall gray standing down there, and she was screaming this bloody murder, like, please don't take my baby, stop, what are you doing, why, all this kind of thing. And I was doing the same. I was very, very angry and threatening to do all kinds of things to them. And if I'd have been able to get off that table, I would have carried out my threats because I realized what was happening, and I decided not to play into it, and I didn't want to watch it. I couldn't take it, and I turned my head. It was the only thing I could move, And one of the grays that was at the top of the table where my head was at puts his hand on my forehead and really didn't have to do it physically, but guided my head back to force me to watch. And then I was no longer able to move my head, and I was forced to watch them take the fetus. And the next morning, that was all I remember, like, on the craft. And the next morning, bright sunny day in Vegas, sun's coming through the windows. We wake up, and she says, she starts to get up, and she says she noticed there was some spots of blood on the bed. And she goes into the bathroom, and she calls out from the bathroom that she's bleeding and that I better call her doctor, which I did. And we went up East Sahara there. We looked pretty close to where her doctor's office is at. And he says, well, I think you had a miscarriage. And she says, well, that's impossible because there was no tissue come out. I was very concerned. I was paying very close attention. And he kept insisting that, and right across the street at the time was a place called Women's Hospital, and they checked her in, and I called her mom, and I called my mom, and told them, you better come down here. Something's happened with the baby, and then my mom was there with me in the waiting room, and the doctor comes down the hall, and he has this funny look on his face, and I thought something happened, and I got up to meet him, and I said, what's the matter? And he says, no, she's okay. He goes, but this is the damnedest thing I've ever seen. And I said, what? He says, well, if I hadn't just saw this woman last week, I would have never thought she was pregnant because the womb was completely clean. And so when we left, when she was dismissed from the hospital, and I didn't want to say anything because we were just so traumatized by all of it, and I wasn't quite sure if she even remembered anything. And but they had completely left memories in both of them. And they were basically monitoring my emotion to it, which is something that they're very interested in because of the hybrid program. That's why they took me along to witness this. But she did remember it. And we just made a vow at that time not to talk about it, but we're like, no one's going to believe us. And because I remember, even looking at my mom after the doctor said it, and I just turned around and I said, they took it. And she seemed sort of perplexed as well, like she didn't know exactly what I was talking about at the time either. And approximately 3 years after that, during one of my events, I was escorted by two small grays into a relatively large room, very dimly lit, which is something that's quite unusual. Their lighting is different than our lighting. It's very bright, but a lot of times it doesn't hurt your eyes kind of bright, But this particular room was very dimly lit, and it was just some small ambient lighting, like a roll. And it was there was a ramp. They use ramps more. They don't like stairs. Everything's very rounded, and they use a lot of ramps. And and I could see a light at the end of this ramp, and it looked like an entry into another room, but the light wasn't filtering into the room that I was in. They seemed to have the ability to actually control light like that. And they just left me there. And I was pretty concerned, because no matter how many times you go through this, really your main thing that happens to you after numerous times of this is just to get through it, survive, and get back.
All right.
And, you never know what kind of thing is going to happen to you, whether it's physical. They also run a lot of mental experiments. Sometimes they're more intrusive than the physical stuff, because of the way it affects you. And I was just standing there, and I saw a figure break through the light, and as she did, or it did. I didn't know it was a she till I got closer, but the light started filtering into the room that I was in. And it still didn't light it up real bright, but I could see much better. And as the figure got closer, I could see that it was a gray female hybrid. And she was carrying something. And then as she got even more close, I could see that it was a child. And she come up to me, and she set the child down, and I didn't know what was going on. And once again, you know, she's even though she's a hybrid, she was speaking to me telepathically, and she told me that was my child, wanted me to interact with it, and I refused at first. I didn't want no part of it, and I just looked down at the child, and she looked at me sort of with that same expression that's on the cover of the book, and I just sort of just melted, you know, and I kneeled down and, you know, started talking to her. She never spoke to me. She seemed very curious about me, but it was one of those sort of bonding things, you know, like I will have to admit that I don't know if it was my child or not, but I did feel that kind of maternal bond. And they went on for a few minutes, and the little hybrid girl seemed to enjoy it. She wasn't afraid of me, and I was actually starting to enjoy it. And they seemed to let it go to right about that time, and then the adult hybrid woman picked her up and started taking her away. And I was begging her, like, wait, stop. You know, I don't. What's your name? I started, you know, asking questions, and don't take her yet. You know, that type of thing. And that was it. And, you know, and that's been one of the hard things to deal with, because I've always wondered, even to this day, like, what happened to her? Was she really something that, you know, was part me? From stemming from numerous things that they've done to me, you know, were there others like her that I was also instrumental in creating? And you know, they never. I don't. If I ever came in contact with her again, I don't have any memories of it. You know, so I knew that just to dedicate for her, you know, that I was going to put her on the cover, you know, because it made that kind of impact on me.
Do you think that you may see her again? Do you have a gut feeling that you may see her in the future?
I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it, because it's been so long now. I mean, we're talking, you know, this is 91, you know, right in there. And I don't know. You know, they've got to the point now, and I heard you guys mention it earlier. I mean, I do think that not only some of the grays themselves, because when you're talking about the hologram thing with it, you know, I think it's more of a mental thing with them. I mean, they have the capabilities to make you see whatever. Right. You know, if they want to look like an old couple or whatever, they can just make you think that in their mind. You know, and but I think the hybrids have integrated. You know, Brad Steiger's a friend of mine, and, you know, we've talked about this, and, you know, he kind of feels the same way, you know, with all his research, you know, that the hybrid programs like reached the point where they've integrated into our society now. Because even her, you know, she looks odd, and in real life, you know, her hair was a little whiter and a little more stringy looking than what my brother Jeff come up with, but, you know, we kind of had to fill that in a little bit for graphic purposes, you know, for the book, you know, for it to stand out, you know, but I still think that if she was an adult, you know, people might give her like kind of maybe a second look or something, but she might even be able to blend in, you know. So it's highly, you know, it's not impossible. It's probable that they are, especially the hybrids among us, you know, learning and integrating into our society, you know, for that purpose.
Well, what do you think their main reason for the hybridization program?
You know what? That's a $99 question. I mean, no one knows, and I don't care who they think they are and how many years they think they research stuff. Nobody knows the true agenda. My theory on it is, I know like Dr. Jacobs, you know, he's the doom and gloom and think they're taking over the earth and stuff. If they were going to do that, I think they would have done that a long time ago. But I think that they're a dying race. Their bodies are very atrophied. something's happened, possibly, where they're from. And the thing is, they might not be extraterrestrial. They might be ultra-terrestrial.
Yeah.
They might be dimensional, or they could be from a different planet in that dimension, because they do have the ability they use dimensional portals to take us. I've witnessed it. People talk about floating through walls, floating through the walls, floating through the wind. In essence, they are, because it's no longer there. They opened up a portal in my bedroom, and I could see through that into a craft, and in an instant, I was from awake in my bed, and I was inside a craft instantaneously.
Well, I had mentioned right before we came to talk to you that I have gone through something recently, and that's kind of like it was for me. It was like I'm here and there. It's almost like you're taken into another astral plane, and whether it be a planet or another universe or wherever, just in a craft. This wasn't your typical media type of abduction.
Right.
As far as media goes, what do you feel about the media and how they portray abductions?
Well, before I get to that, though, let me finish on I think the Greys are not able to reproduce anymore. I think their bodies, maybe they relied on technology for so long, that's why they've atrophied so much, and maybe even because they have really a complete lack of emotion. And that's one of the things that I've tried to deal with psychologically is, like, they really don't know, they don't have any empathy. So, I've tried not to blame them as much for some of the stuff they've done, because they don't feel things like we do, but that's one of the main things that they're interested in, because to the human species, physically is very appealing to them. We're quite a physical specimen, especially compared to the Greys. Intellectually, well, come on. Just take a look around, tell us how smart we are. But but if you combine the two, you've got quite a species. And so I think by creating the hybrids, what's happening is these hybrids, they're exhibiting some of these same emotional traits and characteristics that humans have. So when they take us, the people that's been taken multiple times, like myself, we're not only subjected to physical things, and that's one of the things, like, that is evidence. You're talking earlier about evidence. There's unexplained, like you talked about. You have a stoop mark. I've got two puncture marks on my side on the rib cage. No explanation for it. I've got scars on my back, pretty basic scars, that I've had numerous doctors look at that cannot explain them. And in fact, I had a lady contact me that had an identical scar on her back, and has had lifelong experiences very similar to mine, but we don't know each other at all, sent me a picture and an MRI of her scar, and they found some kind of little object that her doctor doesn't even know what it is down along her spine, So it's probably some kind of an implant, a strange place for it, but it's something very unique. And, so, you've got stuff, physical things that happen with these events as well. But the Greys monitor our emotions, because I think they have to, because they're dealing with these hybrids that are coming up that are exhibiting some of these same traits. And, of course, I say good luck, because, we can't even figure ourselves out, so, but it's something that they're having to deal with. And that's why I think that they've tried to integrate them into our society as well. They monitor us even with the implants to put us in certain situations that they can monitor. I think it's one of the reasons it's such a long-term project, is learning if they do go back to wherever they're from with millions of hybrids, it's got to be something that the tall Greys want to be able to control, and they have to understand, the psychological makeup of what they've created. So I mean, it goes way beyond like smaller gray clones who have the hive mentality, all work all in the same, like central base. And I don't think the hybrids are like that. I think they're as unique and individual as the humans are, So that really plays into a lot of the stuff that they will try to do in their experiments to put you in scenarios where, just like what they did with me when they wanted to monitor anger. Well, this is what triggers this. This is how severe it can get, and they'll do the same thing, whatever it is. And even the same thing with some of the sexual experiments that they do. Obviously they understand the biology of it, and they understand the human reproductive system, but they don't understand the psychological part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've, there's stuff that I described in the book, with lots of humans all together in a room while they were observing. And, it sounds like some kind of a big orgy thing, but trust me, it was far from that. And funny enough, I ran into another lady who contacted me and said the same thing happened to me, very similar type room, all humans, all in a sort of I call it like, zombie type state, like they were coherent as far as being able to go about, but they seemed to be in some kind of drug stupor. And maybe I was too, and maybe they were all observing things just like I was. But this lady described the exact same thing and said that these guys would get on top of her when they wouldn't even look at her in the face. They were like looking above her, like she wasn't even there. And she had a rudimentary drawing of this room that she had given to her therapist, which happens to be a lady that I know here in Tennessee. And it all happened before my book even came out. And when she read the description of when I was put through that experiment, and I think that's what it was, and it freaked her out because it was almost, verbatim of what exactly had happened to her. And so she sent me the drawing, I'm like, wow, we didn't know each other. And of course, one would say, at first, my thought was, well, she just read what it was in my book. Maybe she drew this afterward, And then I got a hold of her therapist, and it was verified that she had given that drawing to her before my book even came out.
You had mentioned, I've heard you mention on other shows about an incident that happened to you, and I believe it was the first time when your wife was abducted, Gina, where you had the three grays that were standing beside your bed, and the wall behind them was no longer solid, and you could see through it. And that kind of grabbed my attention because one of the gentlemen I had worked with, who was an abductee by the name of David Eckhart, has had the same phenomena happen to him, where he can look.
Well, that's what I was. Yes, well, that's what I was talking about earlier, the dimensional portal. I mean, that was it. We my interest in the paranormal. One of the things that happens is because of this, in my opinion, what happens to us when we're taken through these portals. It changes our vibrational rate, our chi, our energy, whatever you want to call it. And I think we start vibrating at a faster rate, a little closer to what the spirit world is vibrating at. And because of that, we sort of become a beacon to the spirit world. And many, many abductees report having high incidence paranormal activity beginning after their experiences. And that's what happened to me. And I was a kid. I didn't remember my abductions at the time, but I was just haunted. Like we moved a lot. Wherever we moved, no matter what house, anything, there was always kind of stuff. And I talk about quite a bit of that in the book. Some of the more major things that happened, and that's what got interested in the paranormal to begin with, because I wanted to make it stop. I lived my whole childhood like scared out of my mind of this stuff. But now what's happened and what I've learned is a lot of us, my whole thing was spirit communication. I would hear them talking to me, and still do, of course. Now I can record it. I can say someone just said whatever when I'm with a group of people, and they might not have heard it, but I'll have my digital recorder and we'll play it back, and sure enough, there's the EVP. And so I've learned that many of the abductees will come back with some sort of enhanced psychic ability. And I hate the word psychic, because it has such a negative connotation to it, and there's so many frauds and fakes out there, but there are also the real things. And when you do stuff long enough, you start learning how to discern between the two. But I believe that it all stems from what you talked about, of these dimensional portals opening up. We're taken through this, and there's something that happens to the human body by going through these portals. And the only thing that I come up with was that it seems to raise our vibrational rate, and we match up more closely, with the spirit world. And of course, if you're in the spirit world, and I really believe that most hauntings are spirits seeking help and not trying to scare us, and always wanting to communicate for whatever reason, and that's what happens. They recognize on their side someone that has the ability to either see them, hear them, feel them, whatever the case may be. But I know personally, 2 or 3 different abductees. Some of them are full-fledged mediums. We've actually worked together before and stuff. So, and it has this ability, and I resisted it for a long time. I didn't understand it, but once I did, I decided, wow, this is something positive I can pull from a lot, what I consider negative experiences, and it's a coping mechanism. If there's anybody out there listening that has had these abductions and has affected you psychologically, that's one of the things you have to do. Is the first thing is to talk to somebody. There's always somebody that will listen and get it off your chest. And secondly, if you have came back with any sort of enhanced psychic awareness, is the way I like to phrase it, use it. It's something that you can turn into a positive. I use mine to help people, both sides, the living and those that have crossed over. I don't even like to use the word dead. I don't even believe in that. It's simply a transition. And when I started doing that, I was like, wow, this is something, I probably wouldn't be able to do this if I had not had these experiences. So it's something that it's a positive that I pull from it. And there's lots of stuff like that. You can empower yourself here, and it really helps you to cope with because you have no power there whatsoever. I mean, you're basically a human guinea pig, and it really affects you psychologically and your self-worth and everything because of that. But you can turn it around. I've done it. I'm nothing special. It's just you become very strong from it. But if you pull the positives from these experiences like that and use it, then you win. It's that simple, and it helps everybody. And so I encourage anybody that's had these experiences to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do believe there is a connection as far as spiritual activity, paranormal activity. And you're right. There are a lot of people that say or have said that they are experiencers or abductees who are intuitives or have some type of ability to be able to clairvoyance, basically, that they're able to use. And yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. Now, talking about alien beings, have you ever had contact with any other beings other than the Greys?
Recently, I did. It was
Okay.
I've actually witnessed other humans working along with the Greys in a location that I don't believe was any kind of craft. I believe it was somewhere here on Earth. But I've encountered also human clones I mean, men that seemed to be working for the Greys that looked exactly alike.
Yeah.
Which is to me very alarming. And as is, I mean, it's obvious that there's certain faction within the government, some black ops stuff that's working alongside with these guys. I mean, there's this, and you talked about earlier the technology trade-off and all that. I mean, either mankind went way up on the intellectual IQ, the quotient went way up, 75, 85 years ago, because we were just sort of prop planes and, cars going 40 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, if you look at the whole existence of how long we've been here, how long it took us to get to that point, thousands of years to get to that point, and then in just less than 100 years, we're now, digital technology, nanotechnology, all these stuff just moving at a super rapid. If you just look at it in the whole timeline of, how long we've been around. So either we got really, really intelligent all of a sudden, do this stuff, or we had help. And I tend to think we had help. And so
I kind of believe you. I think there was a trade-off somewhere down the line.
Whether it was the Eisenhower thing, that's that's a big one. Who knows? I don't know. It's like, I don't think anybody really knows, but I do know that I've seen other humans working alongside with the Greys. But the only other, and besides the clones, I did have an encounter with what to me was very frightening. I try my best to, one of the things I pulled from all these experiences, and even a lot of my paranormal work, is to have a life of no fear, because I figured, like, I don't know things that's happened to me, what do I have to be afraid of, And, but this one really shook me up. Really shook me up. And it was some sort of a hybrid that looks, it really looked like a combination of a human, a gray, and a reptilian. And, I know there's, I've never seen an actual reptilian. I've talked to others who've seen grays and reptilians together. And sometimes with the reptilians, it seems like people have a harder time even wrapping their head around that, because you're talking some kind of reptile-looking creature, But there's, a lot of evidence with that. In fact, I'm not so sure that they're even extraterrestrial. They might have been here all along.
You may be right about that. There is some evidence that very well may be true.
Now that's a thought.
Well, I just go back to some of the things I heard from other experiencers, and in particular David, where he has been taken to underground and underwater facilities, and where there be humans working along with other species in these undergrounds, even doing labor, manual work, and there is a hierarchy. I mean, that, there's the Greys, like you said earlier, the small Greys seem to be a biological type of entity used strictly for work and taking orders. The tall Greys seem to be an actual biological flesh and blood type of creature. And it seems that for the most part that the reptilians kind of put things in order, but they got something above them as well. I mean, you can call them insectoids or wherever you want to call them, but there does seem to be a hierarchy. And I was just interested if you had ever, if you had experienced any of that at all. Though, there have been people that have experienced it.
I have had experience also in what was an underwater facility, and I remember being put in a tube, like it was some kind of a small little craft, and there was me and 3 other people, humans, and there was these little cylinder tube things that they actually locked us in, which got me very claustrophobic. And I could actually see out the top of it as the craft went underwater, and I could see all this water like rushing really fast, and it really freaked me out, and ended up in an underwater facility, a dome-shaped part of it. You could actually look out, into the sea, on the floor of the ocean.
Yeah, that's what's been described to me. They had these underground facilities that, like you said, seem to be domed, where you can see out of it, and they're more like cities. The ones underwater, they're more like cities, and
yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, actually, a lot of what you're telling me is a lot of what I've been hearing from one person in particular, though I have heard other things from other experiencers. But yeah, the thing with the portal in the bedroom, seeing into a facility is wow.
Yeah. It's uncanny.
Well, what happened on that is, and part of what reason I got into talking about a little bit about the paranormal is because a lot of times, in the quiet of the night is when I will be visited, which of course, if you're a spirit, it's the perfect time to try to get somebody's attention. And I was awakened by this tapping on the side of my bed. That's what you're talking about. And I just heard this rat-a-tat-tat kind of sound. I wrote about this in the book, and I didn't immediately open my eyes because, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but a lot of times, you can actually scare a ghost away, I mean, seriously. So if you react in the wrong way, and so I was like, my first thought was it was a spirit, somebody needed help, because that's usually why they're coming in my case. And so I didn't open my eyes. It woke me up. I almost have a sleep disorder as it is. I'm a very, very light sleeper. I'm sure it's stemming from my experiences, and I'm on edge a lot during, it's not like normal life for people to just go to bed and don't think about, when the abductee goes to bed, you always in the back of your mind, it's tonight's the night,
I imagine.
Not bad.
That type of thing. And I haven't had an experience that I remember in a year now, which is a very long time for me, and it's been, it's peaceful.
I was just going to ask you when your last encounter was.
So it's been about that, But what happened is I hear this rat-a-tat sound, and my first thought was, spirit, and so I just didn't want to I actually sincerely wanted to help it. I've reached this point where I talk to them all the time. It's not something I'm afraid of, and I hear it again, and I decided just to open my eyes but not move. May or may not see full body apparition. Sometimes I have. Other times, they don't have the energy to do that, and I would just try to speak to them and see if I can hear them. And instead, and I'm laying on my side toward the edge of the bed where the tapping is coming from. When I open my eyes, I see this oval shape. Well, I see three grays standing right on the edge of my bed, which obviously were the ones making the tapping noise. And I see my whole bedroom wall, which I was facing, was gone, and in its place was this oval shape, and it had this sort of watery kind of texture, like in a mirage, but it was upright, but it was clear enough you could still see through it, and there was this white kind of misty stuff around it, maybe 18 inches all the way around it. And I could see another gray in that. I could see into the craft, and they have what I call sort of a receiving room, like when they first take you through. It's not very big, and it's sort of this initial place they look you over before they do whatever they're going to do for that particular time. And but it was waiting, and my first thought was Gina, and I didn't want like I said earlier, you don't want anybody else taken. And and so I tried to speak to them, like, basically I tried to wake her up, and I was trying to, like, Alva, I don't know what I thought at the time that she was going to be able to do, but, it's just your first thing is, like, just to react and naturally try to get away, and I couldn't speak. And I was so frustrated, like I was trying to scream to wake her up, and I couldn't. And then I was started in my mind, like, begging them not to take her. And I started to scream the word no, meaning, no, don't take her. And as I was starting to, in my mind, trying to scream it, in that instant, I was on the ship, and the word came out. The rest of the word of a one-syllable word.
Wow.
And that was it, And that was, but I think they knew. Looking back on it now, I think they did me a favor because I had sort of expressed that. I think they knew that it bothered me that I never knew how they were doing it, like all these years, and so I think they like, oh, we'll wake him up, we'll show him, and that's exactly what they did. So in a way, I guess they did me a favor, but because it always bothered me, I would read these accounts, and there was times I would see him, then I would black out, just like the very first time that it happened, when I saw it on the other side of the window, I after the shock of it, I blacked out, and the next thing I know, like I'm on the craft, surrounded by these things and screaming like crazy as a little kid, And but I would read the stuff I talked about, like where people said, "Oh, I was floated out, through the window, through the roof, whatever," and it would just bother me, like, wow, all these times that I've been taking, and I don't know how they get from point A to point B, and so because that was only a few years ago, so and then once that happened, then it was like, wow, this explains they're doing this dimensional portals. This explains the whole paranormal connection as to why so many of us, are attracted, are such an attraction to the spirit world, and why we've had these certain psychic abilities. And mine, and funny enough, and not only just me, but there's a lot of us that this psychic awareness seems to be amplifying now. It seems to be increasing. I've been having more and more things like, and I'm not even trying, like we were walking in Walmart the other day, and I looked at Gina and I said 176 because it popped in my head, and she goes, "What's that?" And I said, "That's what our bill's going to be." And we went through, it was 176.13, and I wasn't even like, like even taking it that serious, but and the other day, these two little 11-year-old girls were at a table, and they were talking, and the one said something about, my mama didn't make me breakfast, and I says, for some reason this pops in my head, and I said, well, how was your Lucky Charms? And she goes, how did you know I had Lucky Charms? And the other girl goes, I had Lucky Charms too. So there's been a lot of freaky stuff like that starting to happen to me, like this sort of premonition type thing, and I'm just sort of embracing it, like, well, it's but I've talked to others, I don't know why, but it does seem to be sort of increasing with a lot of us.
Wow. Well, I've heard the same thing as well. How did your wife handle being taken?
Well, she really has no memory of anything. Well, I can't say that for sure, because she has had a couple of memories of babies, which has really bothered her. And so she thinks there's probably a connection with that. We had an incident where we were both one night taken, and I did all the stuff, like put cameras in the room and everything, and of course, they're going to shut them off. But I did leave a recorder one night, and this, you guys might find this interesting, because we'd had an incident where we woke up. I got up in the morning, and I had a gash. I mean, not just a scratch, but I mean a large gash on my shin area of my leg. And Gina came out of the bathroom, and I was like, whoa. And she hadn't noticed it, but she had almost matching about 1.5 inches scratches on each side of her collarbone. Almost like something had her around the neck, you know. And of course, some people say, well, with your paranormal work, you know, you're going to get, and that really has, I've had like one incident where I've been scratched on my back, you know, from something like that. But if for us both be taking that, so we set up recorders and cameras and stuff, and it was just a couple of nights after that I was checking, going back over the recorder, and I actually caught EVPs in the you know, in the room with us, you know, and Gina's friend had just given her this large crystal and as a gift, and we helped her out, you know. She wanted to try to pay us back in some way, you know, and so she had given her this large crystal. Gina had it on her nightstand, and they were commenting about the spirit. We were actually getting EVPs of the spirits commenting about the crystal.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I kissed Gina goodnight, and you could hear us say goodnight to each other, and then we had catch a female EVP that said, "I like that." So, you know, we knew it was kind of freaky, you know, and we're going to bed, and all these people that we can't see are watching us. But later in the night, I hear this very strange metallic type noise, which I was not able to debunk. And, you know, as a paranormal researcher, I mean, you know, debunk first and then go from there. And could not find any rational explanation as to what caused that noise. And right after that, there was a male spirit. We caught EVP, and this is very strange to hear from the spirit world. But he seemed upset, and he says, "Oh my God, oh my God." And, you know, my whole thought was like, well, what is he seeing? That you get something to that effect, you know, because we knew they must have been observing us. And so, you know, something must have happened that night. You know, maybe it was associated with the metallic sound. You know, there are, I usually have precursors of an event, you know, a humming sound. It's something that I've been trying to bring a little bit more into the forefront with other people who hear these unusual sounds, because I seem to be the only one when I hear this low pulsating humming sound, and it usually happens for 3 or 4 days, and then there'll be an event. And others that I've been talking to, I found one time there was a friend of mine in Kentucky with an experiencer, and another guy that's about an hour south of me here in Tennessee, and all had remembered having an event, and both of them, because I asked if you guys heard, you know, this humming sound, you know, of which they both, the same thing has happened to them. So we were all separated from each other, but had an event the same night, it seemed like anyway. We didn't see each other, but, you know, it was a precursor of this humming sound, you know. So the metallic sound, it wasn't like the humming sound that I hear, but I don't know if it had something to do with it or not, you know. But so we, you know, with Gina's case, you know, she has had a little bit of, you know, memories and stuff like that about babies and a couple of very unusual lucid dreams. It seems to be stemming from that as well. And that's pretty much it, you know. We probably think that if anything, they've implanted her, you know, just to monitor. Once again, you know, that's one of the scariest parts about this whole thing, and to me, is the implants. You know, because I think that, you know, I think they're also not just some object. I think they're actually just like the biological robots. I think they attach to you and become part of you, and that they can measure like your syntax, sensory information, allows them to see what we see, hear what we hear, and possibly even control our thoughts or actions. And that part of it is very alarming.
Well, Bret, I tell you what, I want you to keep in contact with us and let us know what's going on. And I will like to have you come back with us sometime
Definitely.
in the future.
Well, sure.
I also want to hear some more about your paranormal investigations, other things you're coming in contact with, because it sounds very interesting. And yeah, there is a connection. I do believe that myself. So, but then again, do keep in contact with me. I really appreciate hearing what's going on with you in your life. And
well, I will do, Lon and Sean. I appreciate you guys having me on. I enjoyed it, and I keep up the good work.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Lon. Good interview there with Mr. Bret Oldham. Good show.
Yeah, that was quite interesting.
It's a lot to take in.
It's interesting because his experiences kind of parallel a lot of what's been told to me over the years, and I find that very interesting. In fact, I'm going to be going back over some notes and start to check on what he said tonight on some things that I've been hearing that I just hadn't really correlated before. But I think he did me some favors coming on tonight and talking to us.
Yeah, and hopefully for folks that have also gone through something similar, it's helped them in some way. Listen to somebody who's survived many different visitations.
And if you have and you want to talk about it, or you've had any type of experiences other than that as well, feel free to contact me at Lon Strickler, famsandmonsters.com. We do get a lot of interesting experiences, encounters, and other such. And hey, if you got a great story, we'll bring you on the radio.
Definitely. Next week, who do we got, Lon?
Oh, I don't even remember.
David Weatherly?
I think it is David
Is that
Weatherly.
next week?
My
I think
God.
so.
And we'll finally get David Weatherly on. My
Again.
God, how many times have we canceled out David?
Well, we had him on again, didn't we? It was, we had a couple times. Poor David always gets the, it's terrible. I always feel like an asshole about it, because we always...
well, I tell you, and David's a fun guy to talk to.
He is.
He's an incredible researcher, and it'll be quite an interesting show.
Definitely. We'll have a lot to talk about next week with Mr. David Weatherly. Lon, midweek, and the show was a big hit tonight. A lot of live listeners that we're not used to. A lot of folks listen to archives.
But 80 listeners live.
53 here, 47 elsewhere. We had about 180, 190 live listeners, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, that's great.
That's awesome.
So, and I want to thank Bret for coming on with us. That was
definitely. Thank you, Bret.
So, folks, we'll catch you next week, and it'll be Monday night, not Wednesday. It'll be
back to Monday.
And with Mr. David Weatherly, and it'll be quite a show.
For more information or any questions, again, info@arcaneradio.com. Visit our website, arcaneradio.com. That's arcaneradio.com. And always stop by phantomsandmonsters.com, where Lon has a litany of paranormal happenings and strange encounters posted daily. You can subscribe to his newsletter as well, so it goes right to your inbox. A daily dose of the paranormal from the Pope of the Paranormal, who has the pulse of the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot right there.
Okay.
Shit's getting deep. It's getting deep. Folks, you've been listening to Arcane Radio. Sean Forker, Lon Strickler. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.